CC, the Classic Car Show. In this episode, we discover a British midget with a mighty following and get the real deal on classic 911s in our Buyer's Guide to Porsche. We go automotive treasure hunting and blow the dust off some classics as we talk about the coveted barn find. Also on the show, how well do you know your chrome? We'll put you to the test. We'll look at a car of today that may well turn out to be a classic of tomorrow, and try to get to grips with a couple of American beauties with a very big road presence. So sit back and get ready to cruise into the long open road that is CC, Classic Cars. Few cars evoke the kinds of emotions that this classic British roadster induces, with its nod to the early beginnings of open-top motoring. And it could be considered an accident that this beautiful MGTC, also known as the MGTC Midget, is even in the category of classic cars. The MG story started in 1928 with the release of its first vehicle, the M-Type or Midget, and it was an immediate success. It was produced and refined for nearly 10 years before the first MGT, the TA, was released in 1936. Well in a vintage class and not even close to the classic era. It was closely followed in 1939 by the TB. The T-Series MGs of the time were also available as a luxury four-seater in several body styles: the WA Sport Saloon, the Charlesworth Tourer, and a very exclusive Tickford Drophead Coupe. Just over 300 of these cars were built over a 12-month period. By the time the TC arrived, the luxury lines were dropped from production. Like most car manufacturers of the time, the war put the brakes on any new car models, and the post-war industry was simply a matter of dusting off old designs and going back into production. This was exactly what the MG Car Company did, starting production of the MGTC in September 1945, with very minor changes from the original TA and TB models. The TC was a pre-war car in a post-war market, and management at MG didn't have any high hopes for its success, but forged ahead anyway while they worked on designs for future models. Surprisingly, the MGTC was a hit with car buyers. While the USA was producing large and quiet, comfortable rides with loads of power, the MGTC was a loud, small-engined fun machine and was considered a real driver's car. This reputation led to the TC being the most successful car to come out of the MG plant since its inception in 1928. Exactly 10,000 production versions of the MG TC were produced from September 1945 to November 1949, a larger number than any previous MG model. It cost £527 on the home market in 1947, which would be about £21,000 in today's currency, or about $33,000 US. Many of the TCs were exported from the UK to the USA, even though it was never built in a left-hand drive configuration. The version of the TC exported to the USA did have some minor differences. The headlights were slightly smaller and were a sealed beam variety to meet US safety regulations. The twin rear lights were larger for the same reason. The US also demanded turn signals or indicators for local registration. To top it off, the US TCs also featured chrome bumpers as standard. This particular MG TC is a fantastic example of a beautifully kept vehicle. The The styling is unmistakable, with the classic wire wheels, synonymous with MGs, featuring the propeller-style knockoff, emblazoned with the MG logo. The organic lines of the rolling fenders that sweep right back to create running boards are in stark contrast to the angular, rigid structural design of the front end and the classic tool grille. Rounded chrome external headlights really accentuate the initial design era of the vehicle. Later models had these incorporated into the fenders for a more modern look. Driver comforts are at a minimum in the MG-TC. A cockpit-style driver position in front of a very retro spoke steering wheel set the tone for a plain but functional interior. Classic instrumentation spread right across the dashboard, a flat windscreen and suicide doors are all hallmarks of a time long gone. Under the hood, the MG-TC was no muscle car, using the same power plant as the Morris 10. This was the X-Pac engine first released in the late 1930s. Featuring 4 cylinders at 1250 cc's. With overhead valves, it produced a modest 54.5 horsepower at 5,200 RPMs. It was a reliable workhorse though, and had enough juice to keep the driver in that low cockpit flying around the corners. For a classic roadster like this, the hood or ragtop is really just for rainy days, and rumour has it, if you are caught out for a drive in the sun with the roof up, you will get a ribbing from any fellow MGT drivers, and so you should.